Hindu gods walked into a therapist's office today, 5 of them would leave with a diagnosis. Not because they're broken, but because 5,000 years ago, before Freud was born, before the DSM existed, before anyone coined the word psychology, these myths mapped every mental health pattern we're only now putting into textbooks. Narcissistic Personality Disorder. Generalized Anxiety Disorder. Intermittent Explosive Disorder. Identity Disturbance on the Borderline Spectrum. These aren't modern inventions. They're ancient portraits wearing divine faces. 5 gods. 5 diagnoses. 5 patterns that have been destroying human lives since the first story was told. And I promise you, at least one of them is sitting in your mirror right now. The question is whether you'll recognize it before it runs your life. Patient 1, Brahma. The creator of the universe. Diagnosis: Narcissistic Personality Disorder. Let's read the chart. Brahma created everything. Every star, every ocean, every blade of grass, every living being. And for a while, that was enough. But then Brahma created Kshatrupa, a being of extraordinary beauty, and something shifted. He didn't admire her. He consumed her with his gaze. When she moved to the left to escape his stare, Brahma grew a head to the left. When she moved right, a head to the right. Behind him, a head behind. Above, a 5th head, pointing straight up, so that no matter where his creation went, his gaze would follow. Pause on that image. A being with 5 heads, not to see more of the world, but to ensure nothing in the world could escape being seen by him. That's not admiration. That's surveillance. That's the narcissist's defining behavior. I created you, therefore I own you, therefore you exist for my consumption. Shiva saw it. And Shiva did what Shiva does, he cut off the 5th head. One clean stroke. Not as punishment. As a diagnostic intervention. This is what your ego looks like, the severed head says. Look at it. The DSM-5 lists 9 criteria for narcissistic personality disorder. You need 5 for a diagnosis. Brahma meets 7. Grandiose sense of self-importance, he created the universe. Check. Preoccupation with fantasies of unlimited power, he literally has unlimited power. Check. Belief that he is special and can only be understood by other high-status beings, he interacts exclusively with gods. Check. Requires excessive admiration, grew a 5th head to maintain his own gaze on what he admired. Check. Sense of entitlement, believed Kshatrupa existed for him because he made her. Check. Lacks empathy, couldn't recognize that his creation had her own autonomy. Check. Shows arrogant behaviors, 5 heads. But here's the part of Brahma's diagnosis that makes it mythologically brilliant, the consequence. Brahma lost all worship. In all of India, the creator of everything has one major temple. 1. The narcissist's ultimate nightmare isn't failure. It's irrelevance. Being forgotten. And the universe Brahma created didn't reject him violently. It simply moved on. It stopped needing him. It stopped thinking about him. The creation outgrew the creator, and the creator, consumed by his own ego, couldn't adapt. That's the NPD trajectory in every relationship, every organization, every dynasty. Build something extraordinary, then lose it all because you confused creation with ownership. Patient 2, Indra. King of the gods. Ruler of heaven. Commander of the celestial armies. The most powerful being in the Vedic cosmos. Diagnosis: Generalized Anxiety Disorder. Indra has everything. He sits on the throne of Amaravati. He wields the Vajra, the thunderbolt that can destroy anything. He commands the Apsaras, the Gandharvas, the entire machinery of heaven. By any measure, his position is secure. And he is terrified. Every single day. Because in Hindu mythology, Indra's throne isn't permanent. It can be taken. Any sage who performs enough tapasya, enough sustained meditation and penance, accumulates spiritual power that can threaten Indra's position. So what does Indra do? He sends Apsaras, celestial seductresses, to break the sage's meditation before it reaches critical mass. He sabotages every potential rival before they become an actual threat. This isn't strength. This is hypervigilance. This is the CEO who monitors every junior employee's email because someone might be coming for my job. This is the partner who checks your phone because you might leave. This is the parent who controls every aspect of their child's life because something bad might happen. The most powerful being in heaven spends all his time afraid. The DSM-5 defines generalized anxiety disorder as excessive worry about multiple domains, occurring more days than not, for at least 6 months. Indra has had it for eons. The key features are textbook. Restlessness. Indra never relaxes on his throne. He's always scanning for threats. Difficulty controlling worry. He can't stop monitoring sages. His anxiety isn't proportional to the actual threat. Most sages have no interest in his throne. They're meditating for spiritual growth, not political power. But Indra can't distinguish between genuine threat and imagined threat. That's the core of GAD. Fatigue from constant vigilance. Difficulty concentrating on anything other than potential threats. Irritability. Indra's myths are full of him lashing out at perceived rivals with disproportionate force. And the most telling symptom, the anxiety, is ego dystonic. Indra doesn't want to be afraid. He's the king of the gods. He should be fearless. But he can't stop. Here's the mythological genius: Indra's anxiety isn't irrational. In his universe, people genuinely can meditate their way to his throne. His fear has a basis in reality. And that's what makes GAD so insidious in real life. The anxious person isn't imagining danger. They're catastrophizing real possibilities. Yes, your partner could leave. Yes, you could lose your job. Yes, something bad could happen. The anxiety isn't about whether these things are possible. It's about the inability to tolerate uncertainty. Indra controls heaven. He can't control the future. And that gap is where anxiety lives. Patient 3, Ravana. 10 heads. 10 competing drives. 1 catastrophic outcome. Diagnosis: Obsessive-compulsive personality disorder with narcissistic features. Comorbid. We covered Ravana's 10 pathological heads in Monday's short. But in the long form, we need to examine the paradox that makes Ravana the most psychologically sophisticated villain in world mythology. He knew better. That's the devastating part. Ravana wasn't ignorant. He mastered all 4 Vedas. He was a devoted worshipper of Shiva. He composed the Shiva Tandava Statram, a hymn so beautiful that Shiva himself was moved by it. His knowledge of Dharma was encyclopedic. He understood morality, ethics, and cosmic law at a level most sages never achieved. And none of it mattered. Because obsessive-compulsive personality disorder isn't about intelligence. It's about rigidity. It's about the inability to adapt your behavior even when your intellect knows better. Ravana could recite the rules of Dharma perfectly. He just couldn't follow them. His 10 heads could quote every scripture, but they couldn't practice a single verse. Intelligence was the vessel. Compulsion was the driver. And the driver never listened to the map. The comorbidity of OCPD and narcissistic personality disorder is well documented in clinical literature, and Ravana is its mythological poster child. OCPD provides the rigidity, the preoccupation with orderliness, perfectionism, and control. Ravana's Lanka is described as the most perfectly ordered city in the cosmos. Every building golden. Every system optimized. He ran his empire with terrifying efficiency. NPD provides the entitlement, the belief that his intelligence and devotion and power entitled him to anything he wanted, including another man's wife. But the clinical insight that makes Ravana genuinely tragic is this: OCPD patients often know their behavior is problematic. Unlike many personality disorders, OCPD comes with a painful level of self-awareness. Ravana's own wife Mandodari told him to return Sita. His brother Vibhishana told him the war would destroy Lanka. He listened. He understood. He agreed intellectually. And then the compulsion overrode the insight. Every single time. This is the horror of egosyntonic compulsion with ego-dystonic awareness. Part of you knows. Part of you can't stop. Your 10 heads are having 10 different arguments, and the loudest one wins, not the wisest one. Not the one quoting Dharma. The one with the most emotional charge. Ravana didn't lose to Rama on the battlefield. He lost to himself in every conversation he refused to hear. Patient 4, Parashurama. The avatar of Vishnu who carried an axe and a wound that wouldn't close. Diagnosis: Intermittent explosive disorder with comorbid moral injury and complex PTSD. Parashurama's origin story is the most disturbing in Hindu mythology. His father, the sage Jamadagni, suspected his wife Renuka of impure thoughts. Not actions. Thoughts. He ordered his sons to kill their own mother. For sons refused. Parashurama obeyed. He raised his axe, the parashu, the weapon that would define his identity, and beheaded his own mother. On his father's command. Jamadagni, pleased with Parashurama's obedience, offered him a boon. Parashurama asked for his mother's life to be restored. She was brought back. But the act, the raising of the axe, the severing of the head, the obedience that required killing the person who gave you life, that act couldn't be undone by resurrection. And then the Kshatriyas killed Jamadagni. Warrior kings murdered the father who had already made Parashurama do the unforgivable. And something broke in Parashurama that never healed. He didn't just seek revenge. He annihilated the entire Kshatriya warrior class. Not once. 21 times. 21 complete genocides. He filled 5 lakes with their blood. And when the 21st purge was complete, he went back and started over. Because the rage wasn't about justice anymore. It was about a wound that couldn't find its bottom. Intermittent explosive disorder is characterized by recurrent, impulsive episodes of aggression disproportionate to the provocation. 21 genocides in response to 1 murder fits that criterion with devastating precision. But the IED diagnosis alone doesn't explain Parashurama. The violence isn't random. It's targeted and cyclical. He purges the Kshatriyas, they repopulate, and he purges them again. This is compulsive repetition, what Freud called the repetition compulsion, the unconscious drive to reenact traumatic experiences in an attempt to master them. Parashurama isn't trying to eliminate the Kshatriyas. He's trying to eliminate the feeling of what happened to his father. And because feelings can't be killed with an axe, the cycle never ends. Layered beneath the IED is moral injury, Jonathan Shea's concept of the wound caused by perpetrating or witnessing acts that violate your deepest moral code. Parashurama killed his mother. Even though she was resurrected, the moral injury stands. He did the thing that should be impossible. And when his father was then murdered by the very warrior class that represents worldly power, Parashurama's rage found its target not the specific murderers, but the entire concept of warrior violence. He became the thing he despised. He used the axe to fight the sword. He became the violence he was trying to destroy. The myth is unflinching: trauma that isn't processed doesn't resolve. It escalates. It finds new targets. It fills lakes with blood and still feels empty. Parashurama is what happens when the wound is never treated, when the pain cycles through the nervous system again and again, finding expression in destruction because it was never given expression in grief. He's the most terrifying god in this list. Not because he's the most powerful. Because he's the most human. Patient 5, Karna. The abandoned prince. The loyal friend. The greatest warrior on the wrong side. Diagnosis: identity disturbance on the borderline personality spectrum. Karna's story begins in the river. His mother Kunti, unmarried and terrified, placed her newborn in a basket and set him adrift. Found by a charioteer. Raised as lower caste. Told his entire life, "You are this. You are not that. You cannot sit with warriors. You cannot compete with princes. You are a charioteer's son." But Karna was the son of Surya, the sun god. He was born with divine armor fused to his skin and golden earrings that made him nearly invincible. He was a Kshatriya prince by blood, born with more divine protection than any Pandava. And he never knew. So he built an identity. Not from truth, from reaction. I am not what they say I am. I will prove them wrong. I will be the most generous man alive. I will be the greatest archer. I will earn through effort what birth denied me. Identity disturbance, a hallmark of borderline personality organization, is defined as a markedly unstable self-image or sense of self. Karna's self-image isn't unstable in the way BPD typically presents. It's rigid in the wrong direction. He built an entire identity around disproving an incorrect narrative about who he is. But proving a lie wrong isn't the same as finding the truth. When Duryodhana gave Karna a kingdom, the first person in his life to say, "You are worthy, you belong here, sit with me," Karna's loyalty became absolute. Unbreakable. Not because Duryodhana was right. Because Duryodhana was first. In attachment theory, this is called a trauma bond, the disproportionate loyalty to the first person who provided validation in a lifetime of rejection. Karna would die for Duryodhana. He would fight against his own biological brothers for Duryodhana. Not because the cause was just. Because the bond was the only foundation his identity had. And then Kunti came. His mother. The woman who put him in the river. She came before the war and told him the truth, "You are my firstborn. The Pandavas are your brothers. Come to our side. Fight with your family." And Karna refused. Not because he didn't believe her. Because believing her would mean his entire identity, everything he built, everything he proved, every scar he earned, was based on a lie. Not the lie that he was lowborn. The lie that his struggle was who he was. If he's a prince, then the 30 years of fighting to prove he was worthy were unnecessary. The armor he earned through sweat was always his by birth. The identity he built from scratch was already built by blood. Accepting the truth would mean unbecoming himself. And that is the borderline terror, the annihilation anxiety that comes when the self you've constructed threatens to dissolve. Karna would rather die as the person he invented than live as the person he actually is. He fights for the wrong side. He dies on the battlefield, killed by Arjuna, the brother he never acknowledged, fighting for the friend who used him, wearing an identity that was never his. If you've ever stayed loyal to the wrong person because they were the first to see you, if you've ever chosen a painful familiar identity over a true but terrifying one, if you've ever said, "I'd rather be who I built than who I was born to be, even if it kills me," that's your Karna. And the myth is asking, what truth are you refusing because accepting it would unmake the story you've told yourself your whole life? 5 gods. 5 diagnoses. 5 patterns that are 5,000 years old and still running in your psychology right now. Brahma the narcissist, who created everything and lost it all because ego confused creation with ownership. If you've ever built something extraordinary and then destroyed it by needing to be admired for it, that's your Brahma. Indra the anxious king, who has everything and can't enjoy any of it because he's too busy scanning for threats. If you've ever sabotaged something good because you were afraid of losing it, that's your Indra. Ravana the brilliant fool, who knew every scripture and couldn't follow a single one. If you've ever known exactly what you should do and done the opposite because the compulsion was louder than the wisdom, that's your Ravana. Parashurama, the unhealed wound, who turned grief into genocide because the pain was never given a language other than violence. If you've ever hurt people because you were hurt first, and then hurt more people because the first round didn't make it stop, that's your Parashurama. Karna, the constructed self, who chose a painful lie over a liberating truth because the truth would have unmade everything he'd built. If you've ever stayed in the wrong story because leaving it meant admitting your whole life was built on someone else's mistake, that's your Karna. These aren't stories about gods. They're stories about you. 5,000 years before therapy, these myths were the therapy. And the question they've been asking since the first telling is the same question a good therapist asks in the first session: which pattern are you living, and is it the one you actually chose? Download the free Shadow Work Journal, it's designed to help you figure that out. Link in the description. Subscribe, we decode the psychology hidden in mythology every single week. Jai Shri Ram.